The one, the only, Uchis has returned. She has blessed us with another incredible album. This one, it's emotional, it's vulnerable, it's precise, it's direct, it's to the point. She goes over some trauma that she's been through in her life. She heals it with her own family. The sonics, the sound, the world building that she brings into every single album is back. And all of us are here to listen and cherish into the greatness that is her artistry. Let's get into it. Let's break this down track by track. Now, just a few things that I've seen in every single interview that Uchis has done in this press tour for the release of this album. One, this is clearly and obviously an ode to the love that she has for her newborn son and her partner, the baby daddy, Don Toliver, one of my favorite artists in the hip-hop realm. Two, this is clearly something that she made before her mom passed away from cancer, but she talks about in all these interviews how it feels like she almost was making the music for herself to cope with the knowledge that the death of her mother was coming, either sooner or later. And three, that this is somewhat of a healing album. It's her facing the trauma of her childhood and the tumult that she went through growing up, and also the kind of confliction that she has with herself between her identifying as, kind of in this white pop sphere of American culture, while she feels like she's been ostracized from the Latin music portion of things. But for the most part, those first three items are what this album goes through, so let's get into it. In the intro, I mentioned world building, which Uchis, along with Travis Scott, The Weeknd, Frank Ocean, these other artists that we all know and love, is one of the best when it comes to finding a theme, a sonic sound for an album, and continuing it perfectly throughout the entirety of it. The opening track represents that perfectly. It's called Heaven is a Home, and as I mentioned with those main three topics that we're going to be looking at in the album, the first being something that she talks about in a lot of her interviews and she speaks on literally throughout the album, but it's the fact that she actually was kicked out of her home when she was young. She was either preteen or early teens and had to kind of figure her way out from a young age, and where Heaven is a Home really just kind of describes the theme that we're going to look at throughout this album. She's recognizing and setting the idea and the tone for the fact that now that she has this home, she has Don Toliver, she has this son who she had with this amazing man who she loves so much, she has this home and she's realizing that that's really the only heaven that she needs. The first three songs on this album all have the same kind of sound to them. They're very ethereal, they're very whimsical. Each track flows into the other really well. This album as a whole, though, you'll see some groups of songs are designed intentionally to kind of almost meld into each other in this way that if you're not paying attention, you don't know when one song starts and the other begins. So Heaven is a Home relays that perfectly and sets the vibe for the rest of the album. As I mentioned, flowing perfectly from Heaven is a Home, creating the idea that home is all you need, she gives us a glimpse into that home and what that heaven actually looks like with Sugar Honey Love. Now in this, she describes and juxtaposes her present form of bliss and heaven with this past and this rocky relationship with the adults that she had growing up. She talks about being kicked out of her home, while also explaining that the light, the sugar, the honey, and the love that she has with Don Toliver and her son is bringing that kind of glimpse into the real world back in. The darkness that she felt with being kicked out as a child is replaced by this light in the home that she has now. And on this song, she describes how really one of the only things she wants is to now pass that light on to her son and sort of break this generational trauma of kind of forcing themselves and imposing this darkness onto the next generation with our own preconceived notions of what we expect of the children and the young people in our lives. Now, on Sugar Honey Love, she makes some light comments to the idea of authenticity and her true self actually coming to light, and then that's brought full circle into a more concrete form on Lose My Cool. It's, in my mind, a really cool way of modernizing this idea that to kind of engage in love in a level that actually matters, losing our cool, which is a more modern term, is really just a recycling of the same idea that authenticity and stripping down the walls that separate us from the real world is the most important part to moving forward and actually getting a deepened sense of love. In fact, it's the stripping away of that facade that exposes the good, of course, but also the bad and the ugly. It's the important part of us knowing that our partner in life is actually the one who's supposed to be there for life. If they only love us when we're at our best, that's not a realistic expectation for a relationship. So yes, of course, when we meet somebody, we have our cool exterior, we have the facade and the mask that we present to the world, and hopefully those masks and facades are somewhere near our reality, but the point is, when the door closes and the rest of the world goes and the lights go off and we're by ourselves at home, the demons, the insecurities, the fright, the fear that we have is going to come to the real world at some point. So on Lose My Cool, she talks about the idea of those facades going down. It's kind of the funny way that we see in movies of the cool girl getting thrown off by somebody coming in and making her act more desperate or outside of her normal personality that we see. It's a literal album, and so she literally says this, but again, I think it's just more interesting how she takes that phrase of losing my cool and then she uses it in a way that normally it's seen as, I lost my cool, I'm sorry. Instead, she says, I lost my cool with you, thank you. Thank you for allowing me to lower those walls. And once those walls are stripped down, the most important part in that reality is to make sure that we're with a partner and that we're being honest enough to where that realness comes in and it's there to stay. One thing she talks about a lot is that she doesn't want this love to become some shell of itself like she sees in other relationships. And then that leads kind of perfectly into the next song, It's Just Us, where again, now that the walls have been broken down and reality has set in the relationship, the true versions of who we are have come out. Where I mentioned the first three songs kind of have this similar ethereality vibe. It feels like kind of a dream is being created. It's not quite a reality yet, although the version of her reality has come true. This feels more of like something that she's envisioning. It's something that she's aspiring towards. And at the end of Lose My Cool, where we get that reality, the walls have been broken down. Now It's Just Us, our real versions of ourselves, comes into a more palpable palette for us to try to digest. And with that, the sound changes as well. The ethereal nature of the first three gives way to, if you're familiar with the band Khruangbin, there's a lot of people who do it, but they're one of my favorites. And it's a more electric guitar sounding, drum-based beat that, again, kind of grounds us into a reality now that those walls have been stripped away. Now that we have those walls stripped down, here she gets much more literal with her description of being kicked out of the house. It's her way of saying, my heaven is a home, I have this sugar honey love, and now that I've lost my cool and it's just us here, let me kind of divulge to you some things that maybe I don't tell or even talk about most of the time in my life. Then she even gets into some things that I think are kind of an interesting perspective from somebody like herself. She talks about how attention is more important than money and it's more destructive than money now, which I think, again, from her, somebody who's in the limelight and in the spotlight, obviously because of her art, you kind of step back and you think about it, and she's not someone who you see at, all of the parties or getting posted on Instagram, going to the same places as other celebrities. Of course, paparazzi's there. Of course, she has her press tours and things like that. But for her to talk about how attention is more insidious than money at this point is sort of this Black Mirror change of perspective for somebody in her position. She's lamenting this thing that she chased after for a long time. She wanted to be in the entertainment industry. In the interviews, I actually found out she started to make music as a way to bring an audio life to the cinematography that she was trying to write and put on in her head. Although I think it's pretty clear she's always loved making music, and that was always a part of her dream and what she wanted to do. But again, her kind of shunning from the limelight gives way to the next song, which is still grounded in the same reality. But after she's recognized the reality that the attention is almost more important than money at this point, she can get back to what she actually cares about after sort of discarding the attention-based currency that we have today. And that's on the song For You. This song is interesting to me for a couple different reasons. One, the fact that she has you gives it this kind of letter feeling, like she's writing a letter to someone. She says, for you, I'd die 1,000 times, something that we've heard in every sort of romantic comedy or romance movie over and over and over again. But again, for you, this is something that feels like a letter, and it's something that's a tangible thing I feel like I can hold in my hands. That tangibility, in my mind, is something that is almost similar to like a montage in a movie. Again, thinking about the fact that she talks about wanting to make movies very often, I think that sort of thematic consistency builds into all of her albums really well. And so this letter that she's writing and this montage that she's created after finding the love of her life with Don Toliver and going through, it's almost like skipping from the adolescent stage in our life to now we're seeing all the highlights of this love and relationship. And then it ends with obviously her talking about her baby, where she'd die for them, she'd do anything for them. This is applicable to Don Toliver, it's applicable to the baby. It goes both ways because it's really just the way of her describing the matter-of-fact aspect that what she was dreaming about in those first 3 songs now has something that she can actually hold on to. And now that she has it, she would do anything to hold on to it. And now that she's holding on to it and we're kind of watching this dream come into reality, where For You feels like a letter, it feels like daytime, it feels like something that she's exposing and that we're watching with the sunlight pouring in, it makes way perfectly for Silk Lingerie. And the comma between them, again, giving us a bit of a pause as this song slows down, and the idea of her being in lingerie, of course, leads us to think that this is directly something about Don Toliver, and naturally it is. On the last album, she talks about the person that she loves crying and her wanting to take away that pain, which symbolizes pretty directly a child, of course, but the idea of the sensuality in lingerie brings us back to thinking about this as Don Toliver. But the reason why I enjoy this album and all of her albums is, again, as this kind of story unfurls with her dreaming of this life and now coming into the reality aspect of it, the words "for you" are repeated on this song a lot as well. So even though the literal form of this is obviously in lingerie, it's in romance, it's with Don Toliver, it's still the idea that love in all of these different forms are what gives her the ability to continue stripping away more and more of the insecurities and the layers between she and the world as time goes on. So, of course, thinking of lingerie, it's one of the final barriers between us and our true version of ourselves, our most barren selves. So as that continues to go, as that lingerie falls for the last time, it almost exposes her to the pain that love inevitably comes with. While she describes it and her music is beautiful enough to only think of the good parts of love, obviously she also brings us back into reality again with the comment that we're leaving her heart black and blue. Not we, obviously. But again, on this song, we also get some parallels between her insecurities in her private life and then also her insecurities or maybe just her hesitations with engaging in the world as a whole. On this song, we get the most of her like kind of existentialism as she talks and asks about why the world has to be this way and why people are the way they are. She's gotten to this point now where she's able to feel bliss and she's able to feel heaven in her home. So as she looks out onto the world, she's asking why more of it can't be like that. Why did she have to go through all of this to get to the point where she feels this comfortable? She's bruised from her upbringing, and obviously on the last song, it was For You. She was falling in love with the idea of love. Now that she has it, why can't there be more of it? So where For You and Silk Lingerie connect directly to each other, as she ends that song with that existentialism and distrust to the rest of the world, it gives way pretty perfectly for the next kind of set of sounds that we have here on the song Territorial. The dreamscape sound that we had in the first 3 that gave way to this slowed, tempo grounded feeling now gets us feeling like we're all the way under the grass. It feels like a snake slithering through this garden, and where the existential fears that she had on the last song, we've now given way in a form of a predator literally protecting its territory. She never mentions anything about snakes, but I just kind of feel like that's the vision that she had. It feels like a snake slithering through its garden, looking for anything that it needs to protect or attack in order to protect what it loves. It's this imagery, it's this feeling of beautiful flowers in a pasture being surrounded by this deadly intent and the ability to execute violence if necessary to protect what she has. On a literal form, this is protecting her family, her loved ones from the external sources of the world, no matter what they may be. Now, I'm out on a limb here, but while I'm on that limb, let's think about another tree that may be represented in this song. And again, bear with me here as I stretch this a little bit, but if we think about a snake moving through a garden, and she's assuming the role of that snake, and all she's trying to do is protect what's hers, she also talks about how she walks like an angel, she talks like an angel, but she can be the villain if she needs to be. And who's one of the most infamous villain snakes? It's the one in Adam and Eve. So, in a way, maybe not intentionally, but a way for me to contextualize this is her saying, if I have to be the villain to protect what I love, Eve, who may have been seen as encroaching upon the apple trees of the snake, she'll be whatever she has to be to protect that. And if her apple tree or her pasture or her garden is her heaven, is her home, is her family, then maybe by being the villain, she'll convince anybody to do anything that she has to, or she'll strike on anybody necessary in order to save what she would like. It's almost like an acquittal of the snake in this Adam and Eve story, as she's been villainized in her perspective by either the Latin music industry or her family being kicked out of her home, or anybody who doesn't see eye to eye with how she moves and how she operates. It's her taking back her own identity and her own power in her actions. So if territorial is an external form of her assuming the role or the identity of being a villain, that again matches perfectly with our next song in this kind of grouping with the song Fall Apart, comma. If we have For You as the kind of start of this letter, then Fall Apart, comma, would be almost like that sincerely at the bottom of it. This is her after she's accepted and absorbed all of this love, but she's kind of sitting with this insecurity that she has, this feeling when we're at our lowest for a day, a week, or a month, and we're treating our partner worse than what we actually want to be treating them at. Where these sounds are representing more and more the kind of internal feelings that she has as we're moving through that pasture, moving through that garden, preparing to protect what is ours. The sounds here on Fall Apart are kind of like static, trying to find the right exact direction to catch the signal for an antenna, which is exactly what it feels like when our insecurities or our trauma takes over in a fight with our partner. We're trying to stop that lizard brain form of aggression and fear and trauma responses as something that maybe slightly reflects something in our childhood comes back, and we respond with the same aggression that we had and that feeling as a child. It's common. It's almost inherent to every healthy relationship. But we can't quite get a hold of that connection to what we know we're trying to be. It's in those moments when we're screaming or we're yelling or we're reacting with emotion, and somewhere deep down we're thinking, this isn't what I want to be doing, but I can't help it because my lizard brain has taken over and I'm responding like an animal instead of like a human. But I'm searching for that kind of grounding force to be able to bring me back to the person that I like to be and that I am for most of the time. The static on this song in the background, it comes in when she's singing about not being at her best, but then it clears up when she talks about the love that she has for the other person, which brings us full circle back to the idea that this form of vulnerability of love is the deepest form of it. It's again the knowledge that we have to be able to be at our worst with the person that we love in order for us to be our best in a unit. Where we've taken that same message that we had in the first three songs, now we've contextualized them, we've grounded them in the background sounds and the beats that go over some of those words on these last two songs. It brings us to the song All I Can Say. And All I Can Say is without a doubt my favorite track on the album, because now that in the story of her achieving her dreams, she's fallen to this place where now she's been at her worst, so she can trust the good feelings that are coming as well, knowing that the bad times that will inevitably follow, she'll get through that too. So for this, she channels one of her biggest musical inspirations, which is the doo-wop era, and that sound that comes through is almost a perfect embodiment of the doo-wop sound, and I think that's one of the reasons why it's my favorite, but I also love the fact that she's not really fantasizing any of this. That's a word I just made up, because there's no give or take. There's these words that just say, this is all I can say. It's the most straightforward track. It's her saying, hey, I dreamt these dreams of having this family, and now what all can I say? I got everything I wanted. I got those dreams, and it came not just from having the dreams in the first place and hard work and doing it, but also by being strong enough to be vulnerable with your partner. I think it's just a really good representation of the fun that can come when you actually confront yourself, and when the person who loves you confronts those same demons and insecurities with you and alongside you, instead of battling against you when it feels like they're coming to the surface. It's really a song about love, triumphing, and persevering, and getting to a place where the self-worth that we have is at an all-time high because we know and somebody else has been there to validate what we have. Now that we have gone through the etherealness to being in reality, to grounding our love, now we've started to celebrate our love. And as she's done that, on the next song, Daggers, I think she's reflecting and kind of almost having some resentment either towards one of her friends in a relationship. This is a relationship that doesn't seem to be going well, which makes me think it's either her looking at other relationships like we did on one of those first 3 songs, or it's her looking at the past relationships that maybe she put too much time and effort into that didn't deserve them. Instead of it being about other relationships, because this album is so personal to her, she even at one point in an interview said that if she was going to make a self-titled album, it would have been this. So with that being said, I think it's fair to say she might be reflecting on her past selves, and as she's doing it from a place of frustration, watching it happen to her younger self, like she wants to take care of that younger person. But she's also coming at it from a point of peace and contentment. It's a controlled anger, a controlled frustration, because she knows that it works out in the end. She wants to fix the suffering of her past, just like I think a lot of us do when we think about the mistakes or the regrets that we might have, but because she and hopefully all of us get to the point where we're so happy with where we are, yes, we have some frustration seeing our younger selves go through it, but with the way that she presents the sound on here, it sounds like a point of peace and contentment. It sounds like she's saying, man, I wish I could save you from that right now. I wish I could do that, but I also know the outcome of what we have, so I'd like to keep you from feeling the pain, but my frustration has boiled over at the same time that my contentment has sunk in. That feeling brings us perfectly into the next song, Angels All Around Me, which is a pretty literal description of her basically thanking the universe or any higher power for bringing her the life that she has now. She's now looked back on the past, and she's expressing the gratitude for the fact that this higher power, this universe, this God, whatever it is, has brought some resolution into that pain and taught her that things do work out in the end if we keep pushing forward, if we are vulnerable, and if we find the people who we should bring into our lives to be vulnerable with. But in my mind, the lyrics from this song from the previous one are a perfect kind of transition, but the beauty in this song and the real art here comes from the different sounds that go throughout it. There's almost 3 different sounds that, if pieced together and elongated, they could be their own songs, but she puts all of them together here on Angels All Around Me. These angels are all around her, and in the first half of the song, before the sound changes, again, she's talking more literally about the gratitude that she has as she's kind of bringing all of this down into a reality. And then on the second half of the song, that reality has set in, and this phase of life is now a day-to-day, an in and out, breakfast to dinner, everything in between. She looks around essentially just to say that the existential dread of wondering why the world can't be better that we talked about on the third song now has been set forth and almost conquered, because as she looks around, the existentialism is gone. She has the angels that she needs, and she's in her heaven, which is her home, and there's no more need to worry about why the world is like that on the outside. It just is. This is her recognizing that there's nothing she can do to change that. As long as she has her heaven, she'll try to push that and try to help others to find that as well, in my opinion, by making this album. But nevertheless, whatever happens, she's good. Considering she's good, it brings us perfectly into the next song, Breeze. Now, if I'm being honest, this is probably the only song on the album that at first listen I was like, I think we could have done without it. But in hindsight, in full contextualization, I actually think it's important to recognize that where that peace starts to set in on Angels All Around Me and that groundedness of understanding that we see there. Now this idea of breeze, it's a sense of relief. It's a sound in the song that sounds like a breeze. It sounds like it's easy to make. It sounds like it was easy to kind of come up with the words and the sonics to go along to it. But without this song in particular, it just adds to the idea of her achieving these dreams. And I think the most important and kind of the part that I took away from it most was this subtle and kind of short keyboard solo that you hear. And to me, it just felt like the opening of the clouds, which obviously goes perfectly with the heaven is a home, the angels, and all of this feeling of her escaping this existential dread. So I think the keyboard being a part of the song is what really salvaged the need for it to be on the album for me specifically. It's a great song, so it's not like I have anything against that. But where right when you think, okay, do we really need this? The keyboard solo comes in and opens up the clouds to recognize that yes, we do, because the real heaven, the heaven that she dreamt about with a home in the first song, has now really opened up to be a sense of reality day in and day out, over and over. And now that those clouds have opened up, what comes next but a little sunshine and rain, the title of our next song. Sunshine and Rain, the song feels like reflection. It feels like looking back. It feels like the completion of the journey. It feels like she's done the work, and now she's contextualizing her journey of dreaming about it and making everything come true. In a way, I feel like this is almost the close of the album, and the next song being like a bonus track. Not exactly in that sense, but you can almost think of it like that. The Sunshine and Rain kind of closing the theme from the heaven is a home and the clouds and everything that we've seen so far. Now on this song, she's realizing that the bad times in relationships, the bad times in songs, the bad times in life are not obstacles to where we want to go, but actually necessary steps. The difference between somebody you dated and the love of your life is only the confidence and the actual perseverance it takes to get through the sunshine, which is the easy part, but the rain as well. When you think about somebody that you've dated, if it's something that fizzled out, there was a lot of sunshine, but when rain came in, everybody decided to go their separate ways. But once you find that person who you'll go through thunderstorms with, life gets a lot easier. Sunshine and Rain is such a beautiful representation of love. Again, nothing groundbreaking. Of course, people have done it before, but Callie just puts her own personal twist on it. Sunshine and rain are not mutually exclusive from love. They're co-conspirators of love. Sunshine is only able to be appreciated because the rain clouds come in. But the sunshine is the same sun that helps the trees to grow and helps to keep the oxygen and the earth moving to where there is water to be soaked up into the sky and come back down as rain. Science. The seasons of life, as sunshine being something in the summer, rain being something in the spring or in the fall, and then of course snow is thrown in there too, and all this conglomerate of seasons that we go through, they're all necessary parts. We don't appreciate summer until we have winter. We don't appreciate the cool slowness of winter without the speed and excitement of summer. And once we find that it's that unit of love that actually melds one heaven into earth together like we've seen on this album, once we have that, the rest becomes easier. And that's what it feels like the sunshine and rain is. It's whether it's sunny outside, whether it's raining, life for Callie has gotten easy because she's gone through the actual hard parts of her life, the actual hard parts of this relationship, the actual hard parts of her introspection, and now she's left with this heaven in a home, and it actually pains her to be there. And when I say it pains her to be there, I mean I'm leading us into our next song, I Love You So Much It Hurts. And again, just to finish out the thought on sunshine and rain, think about the fact that sunshine is the first word, and the song right before that song is breeze, something that we feel in the summertime and love, and rain, ending that song title, also leads us into the last song here, I Love You So Much It Hurts. So again, just symbolizing that in the middle of love, on the opposite, on both sides are pain and bliss. But I Love You So Much It Hurts represents that perfectly, and the more love you have in your life, inevitably the more pain that comes with it. In our partners, the love we feel from, for, or because of them is a much more intense love than when it's just for ourselves. When somebody else is hurting us, it feels more intense because that's the person we wanted to trust the most. If they're the person hurting, it hurts more because we know we can take on the pain, but we want to take away all of the pain from them, like we saw in Daggers. Even the prospect of pain with somebody that we love is hard because we inevitably see it and we get more fearful of them to take risks, whether it's as a parent or as a partner, because we know that if you do go through that pain, we inevitably will have to go through it with them. The second half of this song talks about the pain of that dream coming true. She dreamt of a man, that man came, now they have a baby, a literal representation of that love, but she talks a lot about the pain that surrounds it there too. Whether that's the pain from childbirth, can't relate, or the pain of knowing that this child's going to inevitably encounter the same feelings of pain that she had between heartbreak and isolation and ostracization from the rest of the world. She's anticipating that pain, and the more love she pours into her family, into her partner, into her child, the more pain inevitably will come along with it, which is the same for all of us. The more intensely we love, the more we will hurt, whether it's by saying goodbye, watching that love hurt, or anything of the rest. It becomes a part of us, and that's what she wanted. She even puts her child's voice in right at the end of this album. Now, I think this is just a perfect way to end the rest of the album as the dreamscape that she had, and it's why I kind of see this song as being a bonus from the rest of it, but also perfectly encapsulating the rest of the album as a whole. Everything before this felt like something hypothetical, while it's also being paralleled and balanced with the knowledge that we have of the real world, knowing that these things came true. The theoretical album that she sang to us on the first dozen tracks has now made way to this real and very palpable version of love as we hear the voice of her baby. We started with the dreams that she had on the first few songs, we've made our way through the sunshine and the rain to the last song, and now she loves you so much it hurts, and we can hear the baby that's bringing this love and pain at the same time to her. Whew. So, that was Uchis, Sincerely. And again, with the letter format, sincerely, comma, don't get me started. I think this is an album that really sets the tone for the rest of Uchis' career. It feels like we're closing a chapter on nothing that she ever really directly put into her music, although now I want to go back into her other albums and see if there are hints of any of this. But nevertheless, whether she sang about it or not, her life has now entered into a completely different phase than we've seen before. She's gone through everything about dreaming of a life that she could be proud of. She's gone through that, and now that we can look back on this album as a whole, we can also see the idea that she's gotten some closure with the death of her mother by recognizing the pain that comes with love. Whether it was the pain of whatever form or whatever part her mom had in her tumultuous childhood, but also the pain that she feels for her mom with losing her as intensely as she loved her. Did I read too much into it? Probably, but either way, it's very clearly a representation of her journey into love and into heaven. If I was going to put it into any category, it's very clearly into the other albums that Uchis has too. This is a vibe. It is definitely an album that you put on from start to finish. They flow perfectly from one to another. She's incredible, so every individual track is definitely something you could take apart, play by itself, but as a whole, I think is where you get the real power of this album. So if you've enjoyed this, if you want more videos like this, obviously you can feel free to follow along. And then other than that, just feel free to let me know if there's anything you want to see. I'm not the best at reading comments or anything, because I'm not a real online person, unless I'm doing research or anything like that. But other than that, I appreciate y'all. Take care of yourselves. Find the sunshine. Find the rain. We're coming into springtime. Life's all about the ups. It's all about the downs. The downs are going to come, so you might as well bear through them. Trust in the ups. Enjoy the ups when they're there. Don't be anxious about the downs, because you can't do anything to change them. And then other than that, find the peace. Find the music. All love.